And Craig has gone off to the conference to be the managing partner of the American Public Media Research Lab and a ground level survey, and he's going to tell us all about it.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Great to be here with you. As Dean mentioned, some of you I know from my 16 or so years with Wilder Research in the Minnesota Compass Project, where Susan and I were colleagues on that project. So it's fun to be with all of you. Fun to present just after Susan again today. And now I'm with American Public Media. Keep that playing, right? Okay. American Public Media is a partner organization with Minnesota Public Radio, so I should be able to figure out how to talk about So I've been there for about a year, just over a year now, and the first big project that I got to do with them is a project called Ground Level, a statewide survey, the most comprehensive survey actually done ever by Minnesota Public Radio. And let's see, yes, I got to acknowledge those funders, and the funders include the Landon Foundation, Bush Foundation, McKnight, and the Knight Foundation. They really play a crucial role in this in helping us to really dig deep and make the survey bigger than we had originally anticipated so that we could bring you the sort of information that I'm going to be talking about today. One of the questions of the survey is a question that I want to put to all of you. So I want you to answer this. When you think about Minnesota, are you generally hopeful or fearful about the future? I have a hypothesis about how this crowd is going to answer, but if you're hopeful, could you please stand up? Okay. Very good. And feel free to sit down if you're fearful. Don't be afraid, but if you're fearful, and maybe some of you stood up for both, and that's maybe that's okay. So very interesting. I actually thought, I didn't think we'd get quite as many people standing up for fearful out of this crowd, but maybe that's what motivated you to be here. I'll say that when we fielded, so that was one of the things that the NPR wanted to know about the state. You know, right now they wanted to know what is the atmosphere in the state. And so before we got the survey results back, we asked the reporters to guess, arguably some of the people who know the state the best. And they guessed, I'm having some of that same issue that Susan had, but their guess actually, on average, came out to be that they guessed that 56% of Minnesotans would be hopeful about the state when we posed that question. And statewide representative, scientific survey of the state. Here's the actual results. 82% hopeful. Very overwhelming. So that was a surprise to the reporters, surprised us at how hopeful the state was. And here I'll talk a little bit about what the funders allowed us to do, the resources that they brought to the table, allowed us to not only survey the state as a whole, but to represent various regions in the state. And as I read them off, if you're from one of these regions, feel free to go, okay? So there was a region called the Duluth area, the Duluth and surrounding sort of suburbs in one area. Okay. Northern, the big yellow area there, northern Minnesota, the remainder of northern Minnesota. Yeah, all right. We have the St. Cloud area, St. Cloud and its surrounding suburbs. All right, and central Minnesota, another region. We got southern Minnesota that we're all right, and Rochester and its surrounding suburbs. Good. The Twin Cities suburbs. Yeah. And the two central cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Okay, so those are our 8 regions. If you see something you like about your region, but anyway, we wouldn't have been able to have this level of depth without the funding that they brought to us. We probably could have done some stuff like this and shown how greater Minnesota and the Twin Cities region, what were the differences of opinions there. And here we see greater Minnesota's, a little fewer people saying that they're hopeful about the future of the state, but really both sections of the state overwhelmingly hopeful. But with the help of the funders, then we were able to, state these results for all of these different regions that we just talked about in the state. And so you can see that Twin Cities had the highest rate of feeling hopeful about the future. Yeah. Other end, St. Cloud had the lowest rate or the highest rate of fearfulness, if you will. In some ways, this talks about the differences throughout the state, but in another way, how I like to think about this is that, well, if there was a candidate called hopeful and a candidate called fearful, we had hopeful winning overwhelmingly in all parts of the state. So I think there's more similarities reflected here than there are differences. But there are some differences that, as you are thinking about, putting together your agenda, hopefully this information about how the state thinks about various issues will be useful to you. So here's another quiz. Who is more likely to own a permit to carry a concealed weapon? How many would say urban residents would be more likely? And how many would say rural residents? Okay. So, another question. I'm not going to reveal the answer just yet. Who is more likely to attend religious services regularly? Let's go with rural first this time. And who thinks urban residents are more likely? Okay. Well, interestingly, didn't line up exactly right, but what we found in the survey is that they were equal to both of these questions. If you just split the state into urban residents versus rural, they're the same. So we're talking about in this conference, I think, kind of things that unite us and maybe some things that divide us. But this is one that surprise to us. We had our assumptions in asking those questions about how this would look, and we're surprised to see that there were similarities on both of these questions. So let's talk a little bit more about what else unites us here in the state from the findings in our survey. Yes, again, we asked this question about hopefulness. We did not only disaggregate or look at this data by different regions, we also looked at it by race and income. One of the big surprises is that there even talk about the big racial and ethnic disparities in our state, and unfortunately how conditions are often worse off for populations of color in our state. So when I was looking at this data, I kind of assumed, well, the hopefulness is going to be higher among the white population, lower among populations of color. Pleasantly surprised here to see the African American population in particular in our state had actually higher rates of hopefulness than the white population overall. Again, overwhelming levels of hope among both groups. It's an interesting result, and reinforcing something that kind of unites us, the hopefulness that permeates a lot of Minnesotans. A part of the survey we asked, and this again, you your agenda, what things in Minnesota are on the right track and what things in Minnesota are on the wrong track. We selected this list of things: drinking water, protecting lakes and rivers, education, economy, and so on down the line for mental health. And just ask people, whether you think the state's on the right or wrong track. The results here that people, rightly or wrongly, think that our state is really on the right track when it comes to safe drinking water, protecting lakes and rivers. And then towards the bottom of the list, we have immigration and mental health. Still over half the people still think we're on the right track of the state in dealing with these issues. But obviously it's not as strong as some of the issues at the top. So what out of these results, what kind of unites us as a state, or how our patterns work? Well, we saw that how we're handling water. Again, we may not be doing the greatest at it, but what people think about how we're handling water, over 3/4 of Minnesota in all regions think the state, we're on the right track when it comes to providing safe drinking water and protecting lakes and rivers. So not only was that a highly rated item overall, it was a highly rated in various areas of the state, and when we looked at it by race of business income and so on. So a lot of kind of unity on responses to those questions. Even some of the issues that were kind of fell in the mid-range, like education, there's a little bit of difference in the different regions of the state, but overall, roughly 70% of all regions of the state feel like we're on the right track in education. And so, even though it wasn't a top-rated thing, it's a very similar response across the state of Minnesota. Similar with healthcare, wasn't the top-rated thing. There are definitely issues that people are seeing. Some folks, 30% in northern and southern Minnesota, seeing that we're on the wrong track. But overall, a very similar response that we see across the state. And again, even with mental health care that was lower rated on the list, there is a difference between the Twin Cities suburbs and the St. Cloud area. St. Cloud, few people saying right track on this. So this is an issue that's identified throughout the state that you might want to take into account with the agenda that you're setting. A lot of people seeing that we're on the wrong track. About a third of state residents, again, across the state, people are agreeing that this is an issue. We have another series of questions about how different institutions in the state, how much people trust these institutions. Again, relevant to the agenda that you're setting here. How much of the time can you trust, for example, police to do what is right? Organized religion, big business, state government. And the results here show that police are at the top of the list. News media, it was fun to be working in a news media organization and having to say, I got bad news. We're at the bottom of the list for manufacturing, state business, and state government, but it is an issue that that a lot of people are wrestling with. But you can kind of see the results here where Minnesotans lack some trust, especially in state government. There might be an issue that you all want to address. And so let's look at some of these response patterns and see, again, how things unite or divide us in the state. And the first thing to look at, the top-rated thing, trust in police. Throughout the state, very high levels of trust in police, right? We have over 70 to 80%. Now, if somebody's looking real closely, am I missing anything on this graph? There's one, where's Minneapolis and St. Paul? Very different result here. Less than half of people in the central cities saying that they trust police in Minnesota to do what is right about always and most of the time. And, there's been some big incidents in the news, some big unfortunate shootings in the news, and now we have one again. And so there's reason why there's different responses in central cities where many of those incidents have been happening. This kind of goes from transitions us from looking at what unites us as a state to some of the things that divide us that groups like this one can help to address. And so if my animation was right, I'd be crossing out united and then talking about divides. So we're going to talk a little bit about the divides that you guys hopefully help address. Again, this trust in police issue, looking at this one by race, we just looked at it by geography. Obviously, the police shootings that I've been talking about have a very big racial dynamic to them, and that's reflected in how people think about the police by race here in Minnesota. A very important issue for us to address. Looking back at some of these right track, wrong track questions that we talked about, remember how several of them had similar patterns, regardless of which region of the state we were looking at. Well, some of them do not. Mental health was down at the bottom of the list, and people kind of responded similarly throughout the state. This question of immigration, we just heard about how important immigration is to our future demographically, so it's important to think about, well, how are people thinking about immigration? Do they think that we as a state are on the right track or the wrong track when it comes to immigration? You can see that in the Twin Cities, in the Duluth area, Rochester, folks generally think that we're the state's on the right track, whereas St. Cloud and the more rural areas of the state, there's a higher preponderance of wrong track responses there. And when we look at these, it might be hard to interpret, but because you say, well, I think the state's on the wrong track because we could be even more welcoming. But that was actually not the response that we actually asked people why. If you answer right track, that you feel like the state's on the right track when it comes to immigration, why is that? Or if you feel like the state's on the wrong track, why is that? And I'll give you a sense of what some of your neighbors here in Minnesota had to say about this. So why do you feel that the state is on the right track? One of our respondents says, mostly because we have been welcoming most of them into Minnesota and getting them on their feet. So they're feeling like we're on the right track and the state has been working. A wrong track response, I just think there should be more background on a lot of the people coming to Minnesota. If they've been in prison, if they've done something bad somewhere else, I'd like to know before they enter our state. So that's a wrong track kind of response. A couple more of these just to give you a flavor of the in your state right now. Right track. I live in St. Paul, between that and Minneapolis. There's lots of people, first generation, seem to be okay, integrated in schooling and job and that sort of thing. So feeling again we're on the right track. Wrong track, I get really upset about the language barrier. If you're in Minnesota, we should all speak English. So that's one of our wrong track responses from our fellow Minnesotans. And again, one more of these. Right track. We have many churches and groups that reach out to various cultures and have done our best to welcome immigrants and make them part of our communities. Wrong track. The welfare system is the best. Refugees taking most of the money in the welfare system, they suck up Minnesota welfare. So obviously most of the wrong track responses we got tended to have an anti-immigration or slow down immigration feel to them. A lot of the right track responses said that we were doing a good job of welcoming them and integrating and so on. So it's an important issue and a very divisive issue in our state. In our survey, was one of the most divisive issues that we found. We already talked about how the responses differed by region. Here's a look at how they differ by political affiliation. Democrats generally, or people who disapprove of Trump's performance as president, they are feeling the state is more on the right track, whereas Republicans and those who approve of Trump feel like the state are more likely to feel the state on the wrong track here. And of course, along with immigration, the political divisions are very stark by geography in our state as well, and that's something that hopefully again we'll be addressing here today. On this whole topic of politics, however, I do see some hopefulness there related to politics, and that's getting us to our last section of this of our survey results that I wanted to run by and share with all of you. So we asked, one of the key questions we asked is if there's one thing you would like to see changed in Minnesota to improve our state welfare. So if you could just take a minute to answer that for yourself, or take 10 seconds, maybe I'll pause and think about it. If there's one thing you'd like to see, you don't have to stick with the answer that's in your head, and hopefully it may change over the course of this conference to think about it for a second. This is what we did is we asked people an open-ended question, they responded. Some of the categories of the responses that they came up to that we responded with are food, politics, social issues, taxes, infrastructure. Just to get a quick read, again, you don't have to stick with your answer to this, but how many of you would answer politics is the one thing that you would like to change? You have to put yourself into one of these categories. Okay? You're good. Something about 19% of Minnesotans had a response that was the most common response actually on the survey, had something to do with politics. How about taxes? That's the one thing. Okay? You're also in good company. The single most common statement was lower taxes. Many of those, some of those 12% said it a different way, but the single most common statement was taxes and was lower my taxes, and that was the category. How many said social issues are most important to address? Okay, you're in good company as well, 11%. How about infrastructure? How many people would bring that? starting to develop some caucuses here, the infrastructure caucus for the agenda say. Education, how many people felt like that was it? That's strong spot here, okay. 9% of, 8% of Minnesota said education, healthcare, how many people felt that? Yeah. Important issue, 8%. How about economy generally? Okay. You can see 7%. And how many of you said something else? There's probably many something else, and that there's 26% has yet to be accounted for. So we had everything from public safety, social services. And are you reading ahead of me? The weather. So I don't know. Good luck with that one, you guys. But the rest of them, there's a lot of stuff to dig into here. Again, politics, though, was the top response. Here are some of the flavor of what people said. We had comments on both sides of the aisle, as well as comments that tried to join both sides of the aisle a little bit. So these are some of the issues that are top of mind for Minnesotans that I would encourage you all to think about in your work here at this conference. And finally, I'll just in terms of which regions said which things were most important. So which regions want to see politics change in the state? Well, let's see here how many we got. And it turns out that this was a top response in all parts of our state. So this was among those issues that I listed. Some of them cropped up stronger in certain parts of the state than others, but across the board, really, people were emphasizing change in politics. And that is what you're about. Part of what you're about today is, at this conference is, forming an agenda for the state to move forward. So I want to conclude with just a couple things from a different project that we just launched this week that actually is giving me a little bit of hope about Minnesota. You can read these maps a number of different ways, I suppose, but right now I'm going to read them in a hopeful fashion. We put up a project that's called Representing Us. It organizes a lot of data by throughout the entire country. So if you're kind of a political junkie, you might like to dig into this data. But for our purposes here today, what I'm kind of pointing out is that Minnesota on this map looks a little bit different. This is kind of how close the congressional district races were throughout the country. And you can see a lot of dark reds and a lot of dark blues in a lot of parts of the country. But here in our state, there's a lot of muted colors, meaning that we have some of the closest races in the entire country. And so I think the hopeful part of it, the hopeful interpretation that I'm presenting to you here is that, Minnesotans are closer together than some other parts of the state, so it gives us a little bit of hope that we can actually work together. At least that's one interpretation of this data. Another kind of graph that we have on this, it shows, how many people voted for Trump in each district, and then how many voted for Clinton in each district. And then the red or blue signifies whether that district is currently held by somebody who's a Democrat or a Republican. So you see the Trump majority, there's actually 3 blue bars. There's 3 Democrats elected in districts that went for Trump. On the Clinton majority side, there's a Republican who was in a district that went for Clinton. Most don't look like that. Most states, if you voted for Clinton, you're blue. If you voted for Trump, you're red. You also voted for the Republican congressional person. So what this says to me is that there are a lot of independent thinkers here in our state. There's hope that people can cross political lines to come up with ways to improve our state. At least that's my hopeful interpretation that I'll leave you with here today, and I wish you well in developing an agenda for our state. So I will also leave you with my statement on the side. Thank you very much.
We'll take no questions, and everyone will have a little stretch break from our friend Candace, who's going to join me up here shortly. Question.
Thank you very much for your history. One thing that I'm curious about is how would American public media use this information in connection with its broadcast?
The ground level survey late last fall and continuing was much discussed on public radio. You may or may not have caught the word ground level, but there were over a dozen stories, and now NPR has been doing a series of forums throughout the city, most recently in Grand Rapids, hosted by the Blandon Foundation, and there's one in St. Cloud coming up, I think in early July now. And those forums are kind of taking the survey results and digging into what does that mean? This next one in St. Cloud, you might have noticed that St. Cloud was on the bottom of some of those lists, and they want to dig in a little bit deeper to see what residents of St. Cloud are thinking about these.
Craig, we've got a question over here.
You said that the number of people carrying guns or having concealed carry permits is about people outstate in the metro area. What proportion of people have concealed carry permits?
In this data, I should have said that, it's right around 11 or 12%, which was a little bit higher actually than I had thought, but that's pretty consistent with the data from the state that tracks concealed carry permits.
And one last question before we switch over. Let's go to Sharon here.
I was wondering how you define rural and urban, because we were talking earlier about how urban is not just between cities, and it looks like you were kind of centered around small.
Yeah, so great question. When I did that, when we talked about the differences between the permit holders and the religious going, I defined urban versus rural there I was taking the urban centers, St. Cloud and Duluth and Rochester, and grouping them in with the Twin Cities compared to the rest of the state there.
The more historical.
Yeah, we had we didn't quite have enough resources to break out more ahead in some of the other regional centers.
Well, thank you so much, Craig. Let's give Craig a hand.